The federal government has offered up a lot of different solutions to help big banks, but so far, few, if any, of those plans have been designed to help underwater homeowners. And with another foreclosure crisis right around the corner, it's time to get homeowners some relief. Joining me now to talk about what's being done to help struggling homeowners is Michael Berg. Michael, a lot of the plans that have come out of the government to, try to solve pretty much any of the financial crises that have hit the United States in the last 4, 5, 6 years have all been geared towards helping the banks. The whole quantitative easing was, meant to help homeowners, but what it did basically was give the banks yet another bailout. Explain that a little bit for us.
Well, what really happened, Farron, and I think most of our watchers and viewers know, is that what happened was they gave the money. They gave billions and billions and billions of dollars to the banks, and they thought that was going to help remedy some of the problems. They also were trying to get the banks to readjust many of the mortgages. As we know, the crisis that hit in late 2007, 2008, we had incredible amount of foreclosures. What the hope was at one point in time was that the banks would readjust those and would actually renegotiate those loans, which they did not do.
No, they didn't, because they put no real controls in place. They didn't make them do it. They said, here is all this, basically fictional money, because it was only money created on computers. And they said, this is what we'd like you to do with it. So please go do that, but we're not going to check back up on you.
Right, and I have an insider who actually was on the Fed committee. I won't mention that person's name, but they were really pushing hard for the government to come in, and we'll talk a little bit more about it, the things the government could have done, and they still can do now. But at the time, this individual was pushing very hard to have a bailout of the actual homeowners, where the government would take over the bank loans and would do that by basically just telling them, we're going to lend you the money, you're going to give us those loans, and we're going to renegotiate them, and we're going to take the interest rates down so we don't have foreclosures, because we know people are underwater with regard to their equity in the house. When you owe more than the house is worth, people are going to let those houses go. If, however, you take their payments low enough and they're able to make the payment, and the house begins to increase in value, which we've seen over the last few years, then you're going to be able to keep the economy moving, and you're not going to have all these things we've seen, including banks improperly going after and getting foreclosures on homes they really don't even have an interest in. We'll talk a little bit about that. The MERS, in which basically it's all computer data now, in which is being relied upon, and quite frankly, it's inadequate. We've talked about the Wells Fargo and some of the other fraudulent action taken by banks in regard to that. But the truth is, we still need a plan now to make sure we don't have a reoccurrence of what happened in '08.
And right now, there currently is not a plan. I mean, we've got 40% of mortgages that are underwater. There's only, I think, about 29% of homes in the United States that have no mortgage on them that are paid off free and clear, and that is a record low. So obviously, something has to be done, because during this quantitative easing, right after the last housing market crash, up comes another bubble. And that's what we're in right now. We do have this bubble. Home prices are starting to come back a little bit, but that's not helping anyone other than banks or people, who have the money to sit on a home and just watch the value go up. So what exactly could be done? I know you mentioned about the federal government buying up these mortgages from the banks and renegotiating. But what else? What are some of the other solutions that are kind of floating around out there at the moment?
Well, Senator Merkley, he had an idea. And let me also say, one of the other problems we have is that second mortgages are resetting over the next 2-3 years. So we got to worry about that also, because if they reset and those interest rates go up, then we're going to have more defaults. We're going to have more problems than even we know about now. There's three alternatives that we have here, and there may be more. And I think the first one is during the 1933, the government went into what was known as the Homeowners Loan Corporation. And what happened there is similar to what this individual I knew at the Fed wanted to do, which was basically they were going to come in and they were going to buy the mortgages. And they still can do that now. We could do that and sell bonds to pay for it, or they could use the QE that they're printing the money and use that to buy it. But either one of those things would work. I think the homeowners loan corporation would be better, because then you'd get investors who would actually invest in it. They'd get a 2 to 3 or 4% return, and then those loans then would no longer have the problem that we have with the banks. It would allow the government or HOLC to renegotiate those loans. So that's something they could do. Had they done it in 08, it was interesting talking to this gentleman at the Fed. He said we would have avoided 70% of the problems we had, because the relief would have gone directly to the consumers. So that's one alternative.
Well, that the only problem I see with that is that it was an FDR New Deal type proposal, and anything that we have, can't say we, the Democrats in Washington have tried to push through that is reminiscent of the New Deal, they're firmly against. In fact, they've already tried to repeal a lot of the important things from the New Deal. But I'm scared that that's what it's going to take. It's going to take another just national nightmare like we had when FDR came into office for people to finally step back and say, okay, all right, do what you have to do to fix the problem.
Here's the problem. The problem goes all the way back to Citizens United. It goes back to money in politics. It goes back to the money. If you want to find out where the problem is, follow the money. The Republicans and even some Democrats at this point in time, their job is to get reelected. And getting elected means money. And the money's coming from the giant corporations. It's coming from the Koch brothers. It's coming from, it's unlimited money, billions and billions of dollars. And the problem we have here is those corporations, the Koch brothers, the giant pharma companies, the big banks, they don't care about the consumers. They don't care about the people losing their houses, because they think somehow that's going to benefit them. But it's not putting productivity back into the middle class. It's not allowing people to own homes. They have no conscience, none, zero, when it comes to the average American who right now is struggling and potentially is on the edge. That those 70% of those loans you talked about, 40% of them are underwater. They're on the edge, and the Republicans and unfortunately some blue dog Democrats don't care, and it's time we get rid of them.
Absolutely.
Now's the time.
And
vote them out.
And another important point is the fact that we have this. We're 1/4 away of negative growth to be back into a recession right now. But at the same time, corporate profits are at a record high. So we're having massive profits for corporations, for Big Pharma, for Wall Street, for everybody over there. But the middle class, the bottom class, they're losing so much money. And this mortgage problem is really the tip of a much, much bigger iceberg. Because once, if the government doesn't act, if the banks refuse to act, these people lose their homes, and it is a slippery slope from that point, because they will start to lose so much more after that.
And there's no apartments. The apartment prices right now, because of what we went through, apartments and the cost of apartments are going up, up, up. All the people who own these apartments, the very wealthy, they're raising the rents. These people lose their homes. There's nowhere for them to go. They're going to be homeless. We're going to have a bigger homeless problem than we have right now. One of the other alternatives, of course, is eminent domain. The government can go in and just take those loans. The government can go in and say, we're going to take those loans and we're going to reset them. But without Congress, without a president who's willing to do that, to make the tough choices, to help the middle class, to support the poor or the near poor, you really need to make a change in November. This is where really the people watching this, tell all your friends. You got to get rid of these people who only care about the very rich, the wealthy, the billionaires, the multi-millionaires, because they're running the government right now. And as long as they run the government, no one's going to give relief like we've talked about here that's a potential.
You're absolutely right, Michael. And thank you so much for being with us today. I'm sure you and I could talk about this for another 30 minutes, but
maybe at least an hour. Yeah, thank you, Farron. I appreciate it.